Welcome to the daily cyber briefing for Thursday, the 7th of March. How's this week gone? Goodness. I'm Stephen Ridgway. There's a very interesting write-up in Dark Reading about some Linux malware which is looking to compromise older Apache, Docker, Redis, and Confluence vulnerabilities. They're older, you say, so does it really matter? Well, there still appears to be quite a lot of servers out there which are vulnerable to one or more of these particular exploits for these particular vulnerabilities. The object of the exercise appears to be around deploying cryptocurrency miners, but also spawning a reverse shell to allow persistent access to compromised hosts. Most of this stuff is scripted and relatively hard coded, so fairly straightforward to identify. You do, though, need to keep an eye on your logs. Again, thoroughly recommend that you ingest stuff into your SIEM and get some alerting around attacks against any of those particular components. One of the attacks, I think, which I find quite interesting, is that they're using a very old technique to compromise devices via Docker. So if you could get an initial toehold onto a device, and you can then use that to spin up a Docker container, it's possible to configure Docker containers. So this goes back. There was a talk that Eliza gave years ago at Bratislava, B-Sides Bratislava, around how insecure Docker is by default. At that time, there was a lot of talk around, obviously it's secure because it's in a container. But it's a container full of holes. So remote code execution on the underlying host and the ability to read and write files on the underlying host or gaining the ability to do that was relatively trivial unless the Docker containers were properly configured and the underlying Docker host was properly configured as well. Because the thing that makes Docker more efficient than normal virtualization is it shares the underlying operating system, and it shares the all the processes that are running are actually running on the host. They're just running under different process IDs with different permissions. So it is interesting to see that is still being used. Or that, when I say that, I mean the ability to manipulate Docker containers is still being used as a method for gaining and maintaining access to devices. So, as always, if you are running Docker, it is not as secure as most people think it is out of the box. It does require some looking after and some thought being put into it. So, again, the recommendation here is, firstly, have a read of the article, make sure that you understand around this. The campaign's being dubbed as spinning yarn. Something that's got something to do with Hadoop, I think, but it doesn't really matter what they call it. The fact is that it is active at the moment. Yeah, they are all old things, so if you are keeping up to date with patching, you are most likely not in a terrible place. But if you haven't been, watch out for these things. So WordPress again is having a bit of a hard time. So hacked WordPress sites are using visitors' browsers to hack other sites. So particularly interesting that this group, I think they used to be targeting web servers in order to install crypto wallet drainers. So, if you can trick somebody into connecting their wallets to the attacker's service, it would then drain the wallet. It looks now like they have changed approach rather. And I actually, if you then browse to a compromised site, your browser will then pick up HTML templates from a malicious link because the WordPress site's been compromised, right? Those templates contain scripts that cause the browser to contact the attacker's server to pick up a password brute forcing task. So it looks like this particular group has changed tack and is now using unsuspecting people's browsers as part of a campaign aimed at brute forcing other devices somewhere. It's a very good, as always, there's a very good write-up in Bleeping Computer that does talk about the methods that are involved in this, and there are some indicators of compromise that would be definitely worth having a look at. So it looks like, at the moment, the malicious HTML templates are hosted off a particular site, and the jobs are being, well, are certainly under a particular URL. The site itself is so it's dynamic links with an X. Watch out, it could be malicious. Don't browse to it. But yeah, so that's where the all the malicious stuff is being hosted. So you should be able to look for DNS or check for DNS lookups for those particular things. Or any potential attempts to contact those servers. Remembering that if you are working in a corporate environment and you're not controlling outbound connections, something has gone wrong somewhere. You should be. And yes, obviously, this does rely on the fact that you are ingesting DNS requests into your SIEM, which, of course, I'm sure you already are. Then finally from me today, TikTok is back in the news again. US lawmakers want ByteDance to divest TikTok or face a ban. So this is not new in the sense of this concept has been kicking around for a long time, but it has resurfaced. If I remember rightly, there was some politics involved in this, wasn't it? One president banned them and the next president reinstated them or something. I can't remember the details. But either way, there's a group of US lawmakers that have introduced legislation. They introduced legislation on Tuesday that, if it passes, which is, of course, a very interesting question in US politics, US governance, but there we go, it would force the Chinese internet business ByteDance to divest TikTok. Now, you would think, well, okay, maybe they would just do that in order to not undermine the rest of their business, but TikTok is by far ByteDance's most valuable property. So I suspect this will be presented as yeah, an imperialist, colonialist grab at a successful Chinese business in the Chinese press. Um, it is interesting in as much as the if this is passed and ByteDance doesn't sell off TikTok, fines are going to be levied at the rate of up to $5,000 per user. Now, the number of active users that might get swept up in that is somewhere between 150 million to 170 million users. That's a big fine. So this will be, I'm sure, the cause of some consternation in TikTok, especially in the US parts of TikTok. Is this a good or a bad thing? I suspect in the end it's a good thing. I know that there's been a lot of discussion around, is TikTok a good thing or a bad thing, and isn't this all scaremongering? Well, I suspect that there is a certain amount of scaremongering, but I also suspect that the information from TikTok from all its entities does end up in China, and the Chinese authorities can ask for any information that they want from that. But basically, it's Chinese law that if the authorities ask for something, your company must provide it. There are no, they don't. They see some of the checks and balances in the Western system as being a weakness rather than a strength. So, yeah, all of your information from TikTok being made available to the Chinese authorities. Well, at one level, you could argue that who cares how many dance videos that you watch? The Chinese are not going to learn very much from that, but they can learn. They are looking for things which are not necessary. They just sweep up the data, right? It doesn't matter anymore. This isn't targeted. The object of the exercise is to collect as much stuff about as many people as possible, because at some point you're going to come across stuff which actually is useful. And it also gives them the ability to target groups of users for misinformation. There are all sorts of reasons why they want to be gathering and holding as much information about you as they can get their hands on. It isn't that they're going to actually try and attack you in real time off the back of TikTok. It is about, and especially because the Chinese, and as are the Russians, are very interested in the ability to manipulate public opinion, and using social media is a very good way of doing that. And therefore, knowing about social media, customers of social media sites is a very important tool in their toolkit. Right, anyway, so that is enough from me for today. Hope you have a good Thursday. It is all downhill from here till the end of the week, which will be nice. I will be back again tomorrow morning. So